Okay, we're going to get started, folks. Thanks for joining. This is Virtual Team Building Strategies. And my name is Kathy Mort, and I'm Director of Curriculum and Training at Standards of Excellence and Short-Term Mission. And so I am actually at the conference center right now at the church, but am doing a virtual workshop for you folks. So I am looking forward to doing this. So at this point, I will let you know that you are going to be getting 2 handouts, and I will probably put that in the box once people start working on an activity. One, it's a whole series of directions for the team building activities that I'll share with you. And these are all things that can be done online. The other is a virtual team building sheet. I really like this sheet, folks. It has activities, purpose, the online tools, and a section for you to make notes. And on the last page, there's also a section with the links to the various activities, the various online apps. It might be good if you just jot my email address down now. So if you don't get that in the box afterwards, email me right afterwards, and I will get this out to you by Monday. Okay. I'm also putting the evaluation link in the box right now. So that's in the chat box, and that will be for use at the end of the workshop, so you can submit that. If you have questions along the way, please toss them in the box. For people who are watching this as a recording, you may also email me and ask me for the handouts for virtual team building strategies, and just say that it's for the STM Connection 2022. That's great. So before we start talking about the specific outcomes for the day, I just want to let you know that when I first started considering doing online training, I thought it's not going to work. You can't build relationship. This can't be done. Folks, it's wonderful, and it can be done. And it has actually opened up opportunities to work with people from all over the world. And I really suggest you give it a try. And today is just a taste of what's possible. So as a result of this session, I'd like you to know a few online training tools for team building. The ones we're going to use: Zoom, Padlet, Mentimeter, and Jamboard. They are all free at the basic level. And that's actually how I got started. And I learned by watching YouTube videos on them. So it's very doable. I am not a digital native, folks. I would like you also to be able to, as a result of this, consider what you're already doing with team building and think about how you can adapt that to online activities. So we're not just using online for the sake of using online. We're using it so that it's purposeful and that it will get you to where you need to be. So I'd like to make some connections with people whenever I do training. So because there are so few people, I'm going to ask you to unmic yourselves for a little bit and popcorn some ideas out. Just speak some ideas out of things that you generally do or use as training tools. What do you use when you're doing team building or training?
Most of mine have been in person until we didn't have, until we
Yep.
couldn't be. So my online would be Zoom. That's what I've used most.
Okay, so what have you done for the in-person? Because all I have done for the online is I said, what did I do in person that worked? How can I do that online? So what have you done in person?
Well, there's this game, like a cultural game kind of thing you can do with people to pick a culture and have to interact with people, but I don't know how to do that online.
Okay.
So for training, so we're talking about training, prepping. books, we do books, but we can still do that online too and have discussions.
Mhm. Good. Anyone else?
Hi, Kathy. I'm not in charge of the training, but I know that our personnel group does do conduct training online, for example, for candidate orientation and preparation of our workers going out to the mission field.
Mhm.
But
And is there anything particular that you know that they do for strategies?
no, that's not my area, unfortunately. But
That's okay.
I know that they use Zoom.
Good. Zoom works. All right. So some things that when I'm generally preparing for an in-person training, I generally have chart paper, flip chart markers, all sorts of manipulatives. I have lots of tape for putting things up on the walls. I have all sorts of tools when I do face-to-face. I have found substitutes for those so I can use those exact same activities, but do it online. So that's something that I'm going to share with you as we go along. Now, ideally, it's nice to have a team member work with you as you're doing any online training. That way, somebody can be pasting the different links into the box while the other person is teaching, and they keep switching roles. That's really helpful because it doesn't break momentum. So because I'm doing this solo today, there will be times when I'll just stop and I'll have to paste the link in the box. So when you're planning to use online, I would encourage you, have somebody else who is there who can just help out with that and put things in there. So I'd like to know what comes to mind when you think about team building. And I'm going to put one of the first tools in the box, and that is called a Mentimeter. So what I'd like you to do is click on that link, and it's going to give you an opportunity to write in 3 words, then submit them. You can go back and add some more in. But what are some things that come to your mind, when you think of team building? Don't think too hard, just pop them in there. Make sure you click submit. When we have the other person click and submit, then I'm going to ask you to click on that next link that I just sent. Okay, I'm not sure if that person has clicked on. So if you would just click on the results, what you see if you're using this forms a word cloud. And so we talk about what comes to mind when you think of team building, building relationships, fun, group activity. And so those are the results. And you can use a word cloud for any number of different activities where you're brainstorming. And let me see. Here's one from another group that I just put on the slide. You'll notice fun came up there again. With word clouds with Mentimeter, if you're using this, the word that is used the most is the largest. So for this particular group, fun, relationships, unity, learning. So that's a quick way to bring folks together and brainstorm. It could be about any topic. There are some other ways you could have done the same thing using different tools. We're not going to use these right now, but one is Padlet, and the particular style is called Shelf. And people get a link, just like I had given you the link, and then they type in all different things that come to their mind when they think of team building. Another is Jamboard. This is, if you have used Google, this is with Google. It's for free also. And I think there's unlimited use on that one for free. I haven't hit the limit yet. And so people can use little sticky notes. So picture the old-fashioned face-to-face training where you give people sticky notes. Jamboard is the exact same thing. Think about when you're putting chart paper around a room and having people do a carousel, walk around the room. That is how Padlet can be used, one way Padlet can be used. We just happen to have one column there. Because we're a small group, you may feel free to stop me at any point, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. So I'd like us to have a common definition moving forward. So why don't you read that just to yourselves? And for sake of people online, as soon as I can move something out of the way here. Team building, for the purposes of this meeting, is a process for helping the team to work together harmoniously and productively to accomplish the tasks before them. And you may say, well, Kathy, of course. But no, that's not how team building has always been defined. So it used to be team building was designed to improve interpersonal relationships and how to work together. So that's how they were originally designed. Let's see, I have a new member. I guess the person just made it in without needing an invitation. So initially it was for just working together, but in the last 60 years, yes, within the lifetime of some of us, within the last 60 years, it's expanded, and it's not just for working together, it's for accomplishing a task. So that's a change in definition in the last 60 years. So team building is essential for being effective. And with short-term missions, we want people to be effective. And so it's not just about feeling good. Team building used to be all the warm fuzzies, no debriefing. Oh, please debrief after a team building initiative, because that's what makes it worthwhile. It's about becoming effective. It's about reflecting Christ, and there's an accountability factor in there. So for a roadmap for what we're going to be doing, I've organized team building into a few different sections. One is the forming piece. How does your group form, your team form? Well, we just want to get into the initiatives. No. There's a forming stage. Then there's the content stage. Some people may think they know a lot. Some people may not know as much. How do you address that content without getting the competition piece? The experiential activities or initiatives, and then debriefing, pre and post field. So for getting to know your team, note this, same sweater. For getting to know your team, this is the Padlet, and I'll get you on a Padlet after a while. So you can have your team do this in advance, where they have, you put a name for a place for their name. Have they ever served on a short-term mission? Why did they apply for the trip? Anything you want them to share that's appropriate for the whole group to know. And then they can just share this in advance. I've done this with groups with whom I have worked and for different trainings and I will be using it again in the future. It's a quick way to get to know folks I'm going to be training, but I know of churches and teams that have used this just to get to know one another. Another one is human bingo. And I'm going to let you play with this just to have an experience on Jamboard. So let me give you a link. Why don't you click on that link, please? And before you start to use it, I want to just give you a few tips. Looks like I have one person in. I've got both people in now. Good. All right. So with Jamboard, and again, this is part of Google. This happens to be our staff. So I made a little name tag for everybody. You can change the names if you want to. I can edit it and can change that. You can change the color. You can change anything you want with that. But with Jamboard, what you would do with this bingo game, and feel free to manipulate, you want to find things that are true of you. So if I wanted to find some things that were true of me, I'd say, yes, Kathy loves to garden. What's something else that's true of me? I can tell a story about a value that I embrace that I learned from my grandma. So I can do that. So why don't you just choose a person's name and just see how that moves with moving something and put one of those little critters on something that's true of you. Good. So in this case, we have moving the name, but you can also move the animal. Good. Good. And Vicki and Ed, feel free to move some around. So you could use this either in a large group, or if you wanted to, and the way I have used this is I've said, okay, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and I'll put people in breakout rooms of either 2 or 3 people. And I'll say, find someone who, and then they'll move, and then they'll talk about it a little bit. So that's just one piece. You may copy out these links or ask me for these links afterwards, and I can send them to you so you can play with them for a while when we're not constrained for time. So introductions are important. So why don't you close out of that now? But after you get your introductions, you want to move up to a different level. You want to move into building group norms. So how do people work harmoniously together? How do you get them to work together harmoniously? And so with this one, this is back to that cloud, but we're going to take it to another level as I'm scrolling for the link. So we've just done the Jamboard. So everybody knows the names, they know something about the person. And then we say, well, how can we work best together? What will that look like? And so with this particular group, they brainstormed and they said, things that help me to work well with people is if people work hard, if they're understanding, if they're forgiving, if they don't give up, if they persevere, if they're on time. And so those may not be values for somebody else. So if you had a team, you'd have a whole list of things that people believed. But then you say, what do we do with the list? How are we going to remember those? To establish group norms, you want to have 4 or 5 things upon which the entire group agrees. And so in this case, please click on the Mentimeter. And this gives you an opportunity to rank. So which one is most important to you? And I just chose some optional ones here for the sake of time. What's most important to you? Then go back and choose your second most and your third most. So just start that activity. We may not get through it. Start that.
I got to say, Kathy, these are cool. What do you call this? Tools.
Yep, they are very cool tools. And wait till I show you what just happened with what you've been doing. So picture you have a group of about, well, let's say 7 to 10 people. And you bring people together, they've brainstormed. Now they, instead of having you say, how many think this should be number one and all of this, click on, I love this, click on this link that I just gave you. And so with all of the people in this workshop, very quickly, we know that the most important thing to you folks is that people are respectful, that they suspend judgment, that they disagree without being disagreeable, that they're present, and that they have eyes for others. So that's how you ranked this. Now, if there were a tie, then you could go back and reframe this. I use this for more than team building, but if I were teaching this right now, in fact, I use this with my graduate level classes. When I start out with a class, we establish group norms. You can do this with a team, and it works really well. And again, on that handout that I'll be sending to you, you'll be able to have this address. And so you can access this. So that's the group norms piece. And here's another way that it might come up if you had different ones. So now we're going to switch a little bit into personality, and I'm going to talk you through this. This is another Jamboard. Let's say you do some teaching on personality profiles. I've given you the worksheet and the answers on this, just so you could see what it would look like. So you want to get your people involved, except they're living in, X number of different places. You can't get them in the same room for whatever reason. So you've done your teaching and say, okay, so what does somebody who's high D want? They would go down and they would choose one of these and move it into the correct place. So they would just do a matching activity. Or maybe you ask somebody to read something and you wanted to check to see if they read it. You could put them in small groups, or you could give them an individual Jamboard. So and then have them compare their responses. So what they want, what do they concentrate on, and how do they measure progress? I mean, it's really different if somebody measures progress by results or quiet appreciation or by the relationships. So, oops, and I have another one under here, whoops, or by being right. Okay, so that's just one way you could deal with content. And again, that's Jamboard. Here, we're back to personality profiles, but we're going to kick it up a little bit more. The first one was about, all right, what did you learn? This one would be, how does that apply to you and your team? So you've got the head knowledge, and that's very literal. You got the right answers. Okay, that's good. So what? What are you going to do with it? So what do you add to your team? And every individual in different personalities would respond to that. What do they add to the team? I was just giving some examples. I didn't get all the way to the end there, folks. The Beavers add a lot to the team. They are detail oriented. They check the facts. They just don't go off without thinking. So they really are processors. But this is a way that everybody on the team can then look and say, wow, we're looking at our team. This is what those different personalities bring to the team. This one was done without attributing names. There is a setting on the Padlet which allows you to attribute names. So whenever you put something in, it would say who wrote it. So that's another choice that you can make as you're working with Padlet.
So this is done in Padlet, not Jamboard. This one is Padlet.
This one's Padlet, yes. This
So-
one's Padlet. You could do the same thing. Let me go back. You could do the same thing with Jamboard. You could do the exact same thing with Jamboard. Just here are your columns, and your rows. You can do the exact same thing with the sticky notes and with Jamboard. I'm sorry, Vicki, did you have something else?
I was just gonna say, or ask, it's probably pretty easy to set these up. Does it just go to padlet.com and you just kind of create your own thing and do it?
They're
'Cause
so
this
easy.
is what you're
Yes.
showing right here would be a great, I can see I could use something like this with personality profiles with people, but
Yeah, it's very easy to do. And I can walk you through some pitfalls that we've run into, and it's just as simple as some settings. You said, oh, it's just a toggle. So, and that's another reason why it's good to have one other person with whom you can work. So you say, why isn't it working? I just had a brain freeze. And so, there are ways to do this. So yes, it can work, and we'll talk more. I think I have you working on a Padlet later on. Okay. So we're going to switch into training, the training part, and how you can use this for training. And again, for checking for understanding, you want your teams to make sure that they're coming prepared and to the meetings, because it's not respectful choosing your number one group norm. It's not respectful to come unprepared. Let's say the team was supposed to do something and they come unprepared. That's not respectful. So any questions before we move into content? Anything on introductions? One other thing that I do, and this actually came up as a result of one of my grad classes, names are important. And I had a student 3 years ago and his name was DJ. And then he came back for a class and his name was Donald. And then he came back for another class and his name was Don. So in his growing up and his identity, his name changed. It was important that he was called the right name. He will always be DJ to me, but he wanted to be called the correct name. The first thing I do with my classes now is say, please put the name that you would like to be called in the chat box. Change your name to what you would like to be called. I had a student named Paola, and she said, first class, Paola, not Paula, Paola. Got it. So, I did the phonetic, but made sure that that was clear. People's names are important.
Kathy,
Yes.
any general guidelines on the length of the sessions?
Oh, what a great, yeah. You mean the length of the specific the meetings, your training time?
Yes.
All right. When from experience, we have the shortest we have done set for sessions. It's been about an hour and 15 minutes. And that was because there were people were speaking different languages. I was the only one that only had one language. Everybody else had 2, 3, 4, 5 languages. Okay. So it was because people were not using their primary language. So we broke our trainings into about an hour and a quarter. We generally will get on before, even for my grad classes, I get on a half hour before and
Mhm.
I say, I will stay till the last person leaves. I don't know if I would do that in a team building because you want the team all there. So for regular training for content, you can stay after for clarification. For team building, you still don't want to have that discussion in the room. For others, we will do 2.5 hours. I have a class that runs a full day, but I mean, it's about an 8-hour class, which could be deadly, except I have them up and moving. I do different things with them during the day, breakout rooms, but you want to be changing things up.
Right.
I wouldn't go any more than 2-3 hours, but
Okay.
I like shorter. What do you think, Ed?
With almost with the and with so many things being done online right now, I think there's a lot of fatigue that's out there, and I like the idea, and we also do the idea of giving people stretch breaks, or you know go make a cup of coffee or something and then come back after 5 minutes, sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah. Vicky, suggestions?
Yeah, I think we usually follow the rule of thumb that I think it's an hour and 15 before a break, or else it's 45 minutes before a break. I forget which it is. I know they're really different, but I can't remember which one it is.
Yeah. Right. So it really, and that would be a good thing to talk about with your group and plan with your group, because everyone is different. 2 hours. I mean, I'm good for 2 hours, but I still want to build breaks in there for folks. Okay. All right. Great question. All right. So we're moving into content. So here's another use of Padlet. What do you want your teams to know, be able to do, and be like? And as you look at this, you want them to be able to navigate conflict resolution biblically. Then they get to apply that in the team building activities. All right, so I'm going to keep moving. For culture, here's another way they could use, let's say they read a book on the 3D gospel, and then say, okay, in East Africa, how is this handled? So they would plug in the responses. I happen to give you answers there. Do this, not that activity, hands-on activities. You can have people working in pairs or in small groups. I did this yesterday in a standards introductory workshop live here, and not with this topic. And people actually manipulated some paper, but did the same thing in person. And then one table group compared what they had with another table group. They were all on the same page. So consider what you can do and with this online. I'm just going to show you how this one works. A scenario. Let's see. Let's move out of group norms. You can give somebody a scenario, and sometimes people don't like to participate in groups. This is not allowing me to copy it. So please be reading the scenario while I'm trying to get this to copy, please. There we go, much better. Oops. Just taking on a life of its own. All right, so you've read the scenario. Now please click on the chat box on meeting needs. Oh, those are the results. Okay, let me get the other one. Well, anyways, you won't see the results there right now. We're going to keep going with this. What you would do is, let's say somebody put in, this is Mentimeter again, put in, you don't have any money. And then somebody says, you give her the money. And then somebody else in the group says, you tell her you'll need to check with the pastor or the team leader. And people have, all the people on the team have 3 different answers. Then you have the discussion. Why this? Why not this? What's best? What are the implications of this? So if you did some different scenarios and had information of what your team was thinking, that helps you in knowing on what to focus your teaching. Where do you go with this? So does that make sense?
Yes.
Where if everybody agrees, if everybody says, you tell you'll need to check with the pastor and team leader, say, perfect. That's wonderful. That's exactly what we want. Why is that? And then they expand upon that. So, and then somebody said, but I have the money. Why can't I just give it to her? Then you have that further discussion. Okay. All right. Checking for understanding. These are it's just a fun way. You name after you teach something, you name your monster bendable. So Fred is flexible. He renews his mind. He has eyes for others. He delays gratification. Susan is spiritually dependent, understanding. She stretches. She's flexible. She is above reproach and she nurtures knowledge. So if they had a whole training on character and they could work as a team to name their mascot or their monster bendable. Then we have team building activities and initiatives. I will move you over to this just so you can see what it looks like. This is called Broken Squares. If you click on that, the idea with this, the blue lines are for 3 different groups. Let's see, I have 1 person in, I have 2 people in. Still waiting for somebody else to join. Okay, and I'm going to keep going. So the idea with this is you're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to see your need and grab somebody a portion of the square from anybody else. But let's say I know I want this piece. This is mine. I want this piece. So I'm just going to take it. Nope. You have to wait till somebody gives it to you. And if nobody gives it to you, you can't move forward. So let's say somebody gave me, I'm the middle square, somebody gave me this. And I just sit there. What's the problem with me just sitting there? I've got my job's done. I'm all set. What's the problem with that, folks?
Nobody else can go forward because nobody's working together with you.
Yeah, well, and I'm not working with them because somebody may need this piece that's on my side. And I'm done. I'm comfortable. I don't need to do anything else. But yes, I do. I need to give this to somebody. I may not know who, but I need to give it to somebody. Another problem with this, let's say I give this to this person. Let's say the only way I'll give it to this person. The only way this person can get a square that's of equal size is to have one just like this. If I say I'm settled and I'm not willing to give it up, that person is never going to accomplish the goal. So it really is an exercise in eyes for others and watching out for one another and functioning together. And just because you think you are settled and comfortable doesn't mean you're ready to you can't rest until your whole team has accomplished the goal. There are directions in one of the handouts that I'll be giving you for that, very explicit directions, and also a link to what to do next on that. Now, so you feel free to just move those around a little bit if you just want to see what that's like to move them. If you're still in Jamboard. So, and the thing is with no talking, that's because in some places there are language barriers and you can't communicate by talking. So, all right, why don't you sign out of that one? And I'm going to give you a new activity, which we are going to spend a little bit of time. And the next one, oops, we'll skip that one. The next one is just one word. This is also set up on Jamboard. It's also on Jamboard. I do this one in in-person trainings as well. So make sure everybody clicks on this. You're going to be working together on this one. Okay, we're waiting for one more person to join. There we are. All right, here is your scenario. And we're only going to take a couple minutes on this, but the scenario, ladies and gentlemen, we are on the same team. And let's say I'm your leader. And I just talked to our host, and the host is just so scattered at this point because there was this sign that some of the folks were carrying across the field, and the letters blew off. They just blew off. Can you believe it? And this sign has to be posted, and it has to be posted soon because it's really, really important. We captured, or they were able to capture all of the letters. They picked up all of the letters. They put them in one place. In fact, here they are. And I just spread them out here. If you've done this before, by the way, because we may have done this, I may have done this with one of you. If what you need to do, please, he said, could you guys put it back together? I said, of course. And I said, so what does it say? And he said, I don't know. It's just one word. Could you please put it together? We need this immediately. So I committed us to doing this, folks. So would you please put back together their sign? And just so you know, these do move.
And it's just one word.
That's all I know. It's just one word. You can talk on this one.
I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
I am stumped.
The J has got me.
This is one you're going to end up using with your family and friends tonight.
Is it only one word? You said not a
it's-
phrase.
It's just one word.
Oh, that's what it spells too. I bet just one word.
Ah, you got it. You're so smart.
No, I don't know. I just all of a sudden saw that. I was like, wait, there's a lot of.
That is so good. That's awesome.
That's
Woohoo.
just one word.
It
Huh.
is just one word.
Wow, that's awesome.
Isn't that good?
That's great.
So then let me just try something else. So don't open what I'm giving you right now. You finished that a little bit earlier than I had hoped, but that's good. Trying to find the other. I'll get the other handout for you in a minute. Okay, so it is just one word. What was the issue with, so then you'd want to debrief this activity. What was the issue? What was the challenge for not being able to get it immediately?
The assumption that it would be all one word.
Mm-hmm. Do we ever make assumptions on the field? So I could take a lot of time and debrief this with you, but that's the type of thing that you try to do. You look and you give them an activity. I would spend a good amount of time debriefing this with folks because some people would get frustrated. So you talk about, so what do you do on the field when you get frustrated? And so it's important to debrief all of these. All right, you can close out of that one. So there are lots of team building activities that you can do. I like to also debrief things at the end using metaphors. I do this with training sometimes. I'll say, choose one of those images that captures how you're feeling right now. And let's say if they chose, and this is also on Jamboard, but let's say if they chose this one of the person stretching, say, I'm really feeling stretched. I don't know if I'm going to break if I bend much further. Okay. Or they could choose anyone's, they feel like they're in white water or they're feeling calm. It's amazing what people come up with as they're sharing with these metaphors. The other piece that I use this for is for the team praying for one another. If you say, okay, let's share prayer requests, all of a sudden it goes silent. Or somebody will share a request, please pray that. And it's something that is not really what they need prayer for at that point, but they feel safe just saying, please pray for my family, which is important. But if, let's say they chose the dandelion and said, I feel like this dandelion and I'm tentatively holding things together, but I know in one big wind, everything's just going to fly apart. And I'm feeling, and they go on to it and they'll tell a story around it. And all of a sudden, how to pray for that person. And you'll pray because you can remember what was shared too. Or you have the person with the bungee jumping, or just taking off. So, and you can choose pictures. These are just some that I chose. I also have what I call my junk drawer. These are things I would generally carry postcards with me, or I would carry things from my junk drawer. And so you do the same type of activity with items from a junk drawer. And again, ask them, how are you feeling at this point? Or choose the item that best reflects what your thinking is about the upcoming trip. And they choose, and then they share out from there. Now, if you were in training that was a little bit long at that point, you might say, okay, you have 3 minutes to leave the computer and go find an item in your house or in your office that shows you, that reflects how you're feeling right now. And so, and just give them time, gives them a chance to get up, run, walk, do whatever. If you want to give them 10 minutes, it gives them time to hit the restroom, or hit the refrigerator, whatever needs to happen. So those activities are also feasible. Debriefing is another one, and I did not get you onto a Padlet. I meant to. With a Padlet, you could put down your different questions on the Padlet, and they could just fill in. Let me see if I have this one. Oh, I'll give you this one instead. They could fill in whatever they wanted to on this. What were some of your greatest blessings during the trip? What were some of your challenges? What's an impact that this trip has had with your relationship with God? Something else you can do. We'll go back to that. I'm going to show you a Padlet right now. Why don't you click on this Padlet, please? And this one I'd like you to fill in. And then we still have a couple more slides. So this is a what's next. What next steps are you going to take to do virtual team building? What questions do you have regarding team building online? Why don't you do that right now? So it's all pretty intuitive. If you haven't switched to the second one yet, what questions do you have? This is a good time to put your questions down. That'll get your attention. What do you mean by gotchas that I've encountered with virtual team building? I just thought of one, but what are some of your gotchas? What do you mean?
So have you had people who presented one way online, but were quite different in person? Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I haven't. It's because when you work with people over time online, it's just like working with them in person. And I can say that more from my experience with working with my grad students than working in the short-term mission world, because I spend much more time working with my grad students. And then I do end up eventually meeting with them, in person. So I haven't had that problem.
What was the gotcha that you thought of?
Pardon? I had one group. They had such a sense of humor. When I put in some of the Jamboard activities, they started moving things around. And I mean, just like middle schoolers. So, I spent a lot of years working with middle schoolers, and they just started wildly moving things around. And then somebody would put something in place and they would move somebody else's. So it was like, okay, to get away from that, what I did was behind the scenes, I went to the setting where they could only view, they couldn't edit. And so all of a sudden I heard, whoa, and then I knew who was doing all the moving. So, and then we debriefed it a little bit. But it was fun. But it was just, I loved the group, but it was just really, it was unexpected. It really was unexpected. So, all right. And what prior training on the tools is required? Absolutely none. It was just a matter of YouTube. I think I've given you the hard part, finding out which ones. There are a lot more tools. There are loads and loads of tools, and some of them are really, really good. Some of them are really expensive. These, I have chosen to pay for a subscription to Padlet and Mentimeter because they are so powerful. I can do so much with these for all aspects of my life. One of them is, I think, $96 for a year. And I think the other one went up to $112. So they're both under $125. Well worth it in order to have interactive training. And so I use it for my teaching. I use it for standards of excellence. So I love it. I really do. And then Jamboard works really, really well. I have 2 Zoom accounts, one for the college and one for SOE. So I don't have the limited, I guess if you don't have an unlimited amount of time, you have to watch out for that for your Zoom. That may cost more. But I love breakout rooms. We haven't even talked about breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are wonderful. And just keep things interactive. I've done a lot of talking in this session. I don't do this much talking when I'm teaching, when I'm doing my classes. I do when I'm presenting, but not as much when I'm teaching. I try to get, people interacting more. So that's what other questions might you have? And you can just sign off of the Padlet and we can just talk. Let me just give you a few more things with logistics, seeing we have had a chance. If you're in a situation where you don't want to have people who are dominating, again, this is our staff. I would do something with, and I've done this with in person using discs, they're like poker chips, or counting chips. And you use them I had a person who was dominating and the team members were in tears because this person was dominating so much, and it happened to be the team leader. So I used chips. So I thought, how can I do that with this type of setting? So I said, okay, let's say, let's say I'm the chatty Kathy. Of course, my name's not up there. Let's pick on Tori. Let's say Tori just talks all the time, which he doesn't. So Tori talks, he has to put in, you know what, that is a screenshot and it's not the Jamboard. So if this were a Jamboard, Tori would put in his name in the center if he talked. Then he'd have to put it in again if he talked again, and put it in again. Once his chips are gone, he can't talk. So he has to be more thoughtful. Everybody has to speak before everybody has to speak. Everybody has to have a turn. Does that make sense?
That is great.
So, and I do that in person and when necessary. You don't use this tool if you have a functioning group, a well-functioning group. But if you have one, and I had a grad class and I had somebody who would have been talking constantly, and I took it out as this is a classroom management tool that you folks might enjoy. Let's practice with it. Why would this be helpful? Because some people dominate? Why else might this be helpful? Because some people who don't talk much have treasures stored away, and we just need to give them time to think. Because there are blurters, and I happen to be a blurter. So there are blurters and verbal processors. We need to be quiet. And this forces the issue. So that's a tool. A reminder for Jamboard, you just copy the link and then share it. Allow people to edit. This was one of my pitfalls. Make sure they edit and can't just view, because you'll get in the middle of a meeting and all of a sudden I can't open it. You know, they have to be able to edit, but you have the authority to be able to go back if they're out of control, and you can make them viewers. So it's great fun. With Mentimeter, you can use QR code. This is another gift that I found. You can do presenter pace, where you control everything, or audience pace. I let the audience do the pacing. So it's helpful. So folks, I am still going to try to get that other document on here, but might be even easier if you shoot me an email, kathym@soe.org, and then I'll get it right into your email box. I'll paste both of them in there, and it'll be maybe a little easier. So there's an SIW coming up soon, Standards Introductory Workshop, for anybody who's interested. The evaluation link is right there. I've been asked to ask you to please click on that and just get the evaluation. I just did one for another group. It's really, really quick. So, but I'm going to turn off the tape and I'm going to hang out here in case anybody has any questions. All right, because that's what I like to do. All right, but any group questions before I go? Okay, thank you so much for joining. I'm turning off the recording, but I will stay on here.